Hey everybody, it's your man Jake, voted most likely to overthrow the government, and welcome to another jog video. You're watching gameplay while listening to me rant about all kinds of topics. In today's video, I have some pretty grim news, so without further ado, let's just jump right in. The United States has vetoed yet another international vote for a ceasefire. On Tuesday, February 20th, 2024, the United States has now voted for a fourth time against the ceasefire of the Israeli invasion and illegal occupation of the Gaza Strip and West Bank. The United States, the alleged force of good and freedom for all around the world, was the only nation on the UN Security Council to veto said proposal. While the UK also abstained in the decision, the United States' vote against the resolution in favor of a ceasefire will now ensure more Palestinians will die, in addition to the 32,000 people who have died since October 7, 2023. Most of those deaths are overwhelmingly children, including 14,000 dying from the conflict, all with the help of the American taxpayer dollar. American citizens are experiencing the scathing revelation about the true nature of their country, and American ignorance is growing more unsustainable by the day. Outside of the U.S. empire, the already disillusioned masses all around the world who see America for what it is are seeing yet again the depravity of Israel's occupation and the American government's determination to perpetuate imperialism wherever it pleases. The American government continues to misrepresent people, as there was a record-breaking protest of over 400,000 people showing up in Washington, D.C., demanding an end to this atrocity just a few weeks ago. And I'd like to say again that this is under a Democratic president under Biden. This is not under Trump's administration, not that, one is better than the other. And despite growing anti-Israel sentiment amongst the American, Western, and overall masses, Israel continues its terror, attempting to destroy all Palestinian life, failing, but attempting nonetheless. It is ethnic cleansing, fascism, colonialism, imperialism, and tyranny, all wrapped up in one proxy nation ready to do the United States' bidding. In response to the disgusting result, thanks to the unsurprising draconian empire of the United States, several nations on the Council and entities across the world had public statements. Here are some of their responses, and I'm going to butcher some of the names and all this, and I apologize. China. Zhang Jun, China's envoy to the UN, expressed strong disappointment and dissatisfaction with the U.S., according to the Xinhua news agency. Again, sorry for these pronunciations. The U.S. veto sends a wrong message, pushing the situation in Gaza into a more dangerous one, said Zhang, adding that objection to a ceasefire in Gaza is, quote, nothing different from giving the green light to the continued slaughter, end quote. Only by extinguishing the flames of war in Gaza can the world prevent the fires of hell from engulfing the entire region, Xinhua quoted him as saying. France's UN envoy, Nicolas de Riviere, expressed regret that the resolution could not be adopted, given the disastrous situation in Gaza. De Riviere added that France, while voted for the resolution, would continue to work towards all captives being released and for a ceasefire to be implemented immediately. Palestinian UN envoy Riyad Mansour told Al Jazeera that the U.S. vote was very regrettable. Call it whatever, humanitarian, describe it as you wish, but immediate ceasefire, as requested by the Secretary General of the UN and almost all humanitarian agencies of the United Nations and a massive number of countries in the General Assembly, he said. It is the wrong message to be sending by the Security Council to Israel. We will continue knocking on the door of the Security Council, the General Assembly, all components of the United Nations, he added. Algeria's envoy said the United Nations Security Council has failed once again and warned the move could have profound consequences for the Middle East as a whole. Our message to you today is that the international community should respond to the calls for ending the killing of Palestinians by calling for an immediate ceasefire. All those impeding such calls should review their policies and their calculations because wrong decisions today will have a cost on our region and the world tomorrow, and this cost will be violence and instability, Amar Benjama said. So ask yourselves, examine your conscience. What will your decisions today cause? How will history judge you? I gotta say, Algeria's response here is pretty half decent. Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel Bermudez, again, I'm sorry for these pronunciations, blasted the U.S., saying its veto made it complicit in Israel's crimes against Palestinians. The U.S. has just vetoed against the UN Security Council resolution that demanded an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and an end to the forced displacement of the Palestinian population, Bermudez said in a social media post. They are accomplices of this genocide of Israel against Palestine. Couldn't agree more, my Cuban friend. Hamas spokespeople. The Palestinian group said the administration of U.S. President Joe Biden's decision to block Algeria's draft resolution benefits the agenda of the Israeli occupation, which aims to kill and displace Palestinians. President Joe Biden and his administration bear direct responsibility for derailing the resolution for a ceasefire in Gaza, Hamas said in a statement. The American position is considered a green light for the occupation to commit more massacres and kill our innocent people through bombing and starvation. You know, when Hamas is saying all of these things, I mean, not that, much of the way it's seen in Western media is fair, but when, this very highly criticized group can say this so, clearly and have world governments veto it at their whim. I mean, this is just dystopian of the highest order, is it not? The Palestinian Authority, the Office of Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, said the U.S. veto defied the international community and gave Israel an additional green light for the Israeli occupation to continue its aggression against the people of Gaza and to launch a bloody assault against Rafah. The Palestinian president also said that it holds the U.S. administration responsible for supporting and providing protection to Israel's barbaric attacks against children, women, and the elderly in Gaza. This policy makes the United States a partner in the crimes of genocide and ethnic cleansing and the war crimes Israeli forces are committing, the office said. Amnesty International, Agnes Callamard, the director of the human rights group, said that Washington had a chance to protect Palestinian civilians but chose the opposite path at the UNSC. And yet again, when the U.S. could do the right thing, when has it ever done the right thing, protect Palestinians against serious risks of genocide, respect international law and universality, prevent massive killings and sufferings, it chose the opposite path, Callamard said. These are just some of the statements from the vast majority of the world citing the need for a ceasefire urgently and immediately. So, in all of those previous statements, if you hadn't already noticed, like the Chinese response, Hamas response, the Palestinian Authority, Algeria, right, and many other groups all gave very specific and precise statements, including the ones I didn't mention, as many of these public appearances often demand. Even Algeria has to say with specific wording that the UNSC is responsible, as if the U.S. isn't directly responsible for this single veto. The UK's vote of abstention doesn't help. And notice how they also use this language of green light in order to safely protect themselves by speaking out against the most powerful empire in the history of the world. The United States hegemonic order is so pronounced, it is allowed to admit in the open that the ceasefire would stop the hostage negotiations. They have revealed with absolutely no filter, mask off, bluntly and directly, their imperialist geopolitical interests. The hostage negotiations exist as leverage for the vastly overpowered U.S. and Israeli governments, and only in desperation do these hostages serve as a last-ditch effort to get any gains in Palestinian liberation. I, of course, mean the Israeli hostages, not the Palestinian hostages. Oh, you thought these fascist nations would help Palestine? Hell no. Also, if it isn't already obvious, hostage negotiations can still occur under a ceasefire. If Israeli and American interests truly wanted all hostages to return, then Israel would stop any illegal occupation, let alone illegal detention or just a destruction of Palestinian people. Israel would stop the destruction and horror it is causing and attempt to settle these tensions instead of actively antagonizing. That would be the strategy that would make sense. If any drop of American chauvinism or exceptionalism remained inside any pro-American person listening, then let me tell you about the alternate resolution, because the alternate resolution the United States specifically mentions that it wishes to pass states that if Hamas exchanges the hostages, then Israel will, get this, stop the military offensive and agree to a cessation of conflict for 2 months. 2 months. 2 months. That's it. Are you effing kidding me? The Nazis lost World War II, but fascism is still winning strong. The U.S. diplomat's language sounds reminiscent of some pure trash Henry Kissinger would manufacture. And if that wasn't bad enough, in the concluding statement of the United States UN ambassador, she said, "We will continue to actively engage in the hard work of direct diplomacy on the ground until we reach a final solution." Like, Jesus Christ, it's actual Hitler language. Even I'm surprised to see it so blatantly. How can you have any doubt after this clear admission? And please understand that Israel clearly does not represent the Jewish people in any capacity. In fact, Jews all around the world continue to be some of the strongest advocates for the liberation of Palestinian people. Zionism is truly a settler, colonial, fascist, white supremacist ideology derivative of European imperialism. It's about white people, frankly, and giving the United States a foothold of control in the Middle East. It's not about a safe place for Jews. It's about doing what these people in power want. So please, just remove any association you have. Zion, it's almost entirely disconnected and removed from Zion. It is. There's just no connection to this, and it's only getting in the way of proper discourse if we continue to act like it is at all. All of this aside, in my view, the immediate ceasefire would be the strongest possible route to ensure the success of hostage negotiations. While the destruction of Palestine still occurs, what reason is there for any faction of Palestinian resistance to stop protecting their own people while dealing with bombardment and destruction? How can any Palestinian braving war against this tyrannical state trust that if they act in peace, that peace will come to them? When have any oppressed people anywhere around the world at any point in history ever just received their freedom with no issues? No, they had to fight for it. Palestinian resistance can see the rest of the world, and the UN and the US themselves are incapable of protecting them, of protecting all of Palestine, really. By the mere existence of oppression being done to them necessitating rebellion, resistance fighters have no choice but to war with the evil being done to them, while much of the rest of the world stands by and does nothing. Yes, there are masses of people protesting and doing everything they can, but I specifically mean world governments first and foremost, the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. Peace cannot defeat war on the terms of peace, okay? And we need to stop pretending like it has any chance of doing so. Also, hostage negotiations have been starting and occurring in Cairo anyway, not in Palestine. It's an entirely, or in Israel. It's an entirely separate area. However, Egypt is also actually building genocide and ethnic cleansing affirming refugee zones for Palestinians. No matter how well-intentioned the Egyptian efforts may be to protect our West Asian family and friends, these zone construction, these walls, show the complacency and acceptance with the horrors occurring in Palestine. This policy implementation implicitly admits that the Palestinian people will inevitably endure another chapter of inhumane conditions and misery and horror and terror. This is just peak dystopian, awful, terrible things. And this kind of policy making, it seems nice at first, but it does not seek to challenge actual genocide in the way it fundamentally must. You see what I'm saying? Americans, we need to accept that we are the bad guys. As childlike as this moral paradigm may sound, American exceptionalism is so deeply rooted, so thoroughly prevalent in every facet of American life, that we have to eradicate any idea of our government acting as a positive force for the world in order to truly get past it and see us truly for ourselves. Clearly, we need to move past the hilariously reductive binary of good and bad, and accept that by very definition, we are most certainly not on the right side of history. The United States government and the corporations controlling it, aka the bourgeoisie, aka the ruling class, are extremely detrimental and harmful to both United States citizens and the rest of the world. They have vested interest in maintaining their control in the way they want. America has school shootings, no health care, and we destroy peripheral nations all the time. We have drug epidemics, unhinged consumer fetishism, historic and record-breaking inequality and pollution, with the added foreign policy terror abroad of the Vietnam War, destroying 20% of the Korean population in the Korean War, attempted invasion of Cuba, countless coup installations in Latin America, Africa, and West Asia. Do I need to continue? The United States is not operating in the way our isolated culture and media tells us. We are not creating the good in the world that American people are very mistakenly believing. And we need to realize that this nation was built by people who did not have the interests of all people at heart. that the people who built this nation wanted themselves in power, actively making sure black Americans, for example, would stay in chains for their own benefit. And this foundation of exclusive rights for certain Americans instead of inclusive rights for all is causing systemic destruction for literal centuries. Indigenous genocide, slavery, the modern imperial projects, all of these things happen with U.S. national and bourgeois interests at heart, plain and simple. It's unfortunately irrefutable. The sooner Americans can accept the very real misery we inflict, the sooner Americans must accept the very real misery we inflict around the world and in our own country, the sooner we can begin to imagine and implement change. We are imprisoned in the ideological mindset of American bourgeois culture. We think we can have our cake and eat it too. We think there's a third wayism that American industriousness can just find out right around the corner. Just got to keep looking. All of these things are reactions to the American cultural allergy of communism, this intolerance of just anything red. American intolerance of leftist ideas continues to harm its own people here and the people all around the world. If Americans want any sense of real change, they need to embrace leftist ideology with open arms. We need to culturally engage with Marxist ideas and wrestle with them in some iteration of a cultural revolution. I'm a strong believer that the American spirit of freedom is just misguided and misnamed. I believe Americans have a much more natural disposition open to socialism. The Red Scare lies for decades can create fear to get Americans to stay in line, sure. But what happens when their curiosity and desperation become too strong? There is a bright future for us right there. All we have to do is to take it, and there's no reason to ever question our right to do so. At every level, the entirety of the American capitalist structure has uncovered its true rotten essence. It's time for change. It's time we take back what's rightfully ours, our own self-right to rule, self-govern. It's time to end a genocide that should have never began. Free Palestine. And with all that said, thank you so much for watching, and thanks for everyone who made it to the end of the video. I really appreciate anyone who watches my videos in any capacity. If you're interested, make sure to check out my other content and like and subscribe if you so wish. Thanks again for watching. Stay strong, take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.